What's going on, everyone? My name is Jasmine. On today's episode of The Slain Project, we're going to be talking about the case of 12-year-old Sharon Baldeagle. She was last seen in September 1984 when she was kidnapped by a man named Royal Russell Long. And after I go over Sharon's story, I'm going to briefly talk about the cases of 7 other girls who were his possible victims. And if you would like to see more videos on missing and murdered Indigenous people, click that subscribe button and the notification bell. Now let's get right into it. Sharon Baldeagle was born on June 26, 1972, to parents Taylor and Helen Baldeagle. Sharon was raised with love, but her parents were not happy with each other and decided to divorce right before Sharon turned 4 years old. By this time, the family had another child, a boy who they named Jay. Sharon and her brother Jay stayed with their dad Taylor in Eagle Butte, South Dakota, on the Cheyenne River Indian Reservation. Their mother Helen moved back home to the Pine Ridge Reservation. Taylor would eventually remarry, and it is stated that his new wife and Sharon did not get along. This marriage did not last either, and the couple soon parted ways. After this, it was just Sharon, her brother, and dad. Her dad, Taylor, said that she was a daddy's girl. He said she also liked to dance at powwows and that she became the lady of the house. She would often cook and clean for her family. But as Sharon was growing into a young woman, her dad said that he did not know how to teach her womanly things, so he signed her up to be placed with a foster family. He loved her very much and did not do this because he did not want her or did not care. He wanted her to learn about life and give her a chance to succeed. So at the age of 9, he signed her up in an Indian placement program. This program was through the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Social Services. They placed Native kids in Mormon homes during the school year and sent them back home for the summer. Sharon was placed with a family with the last name of Dexter, and they lived in Rexburg, Idaho. The Dexters had 5 children of their own. Sharon was their first foster child, and they took her in with no compensation. Sharon loved it there. It gave her stability, love, and she learned about life off of the reservation. She loved it so much that she convinced her younger brother Jay to sign up for the program. When he was 9, he was also sent to Rexburg, Idaho. His foster mother was the sister of Sharon's foster mother. They lived about 1.5 miles from where Sharon lived with the Dexters. They attended the same school and were happy that they were near each other again. The school year of 1984 was supposed to be Sharon's 4th year in the foster placement program. But on August 23rd, just 4 days before her and Jay were supposed to board the bus back to Idaho, her dad Taylor was informed that Sharon was dropped from the program. The reason given was because of her attitude. They had said that she had fought with her foster siblings. Everyone thought those problems were put to rest, and the Dexters were even expecting her back. Her foster mother, Sandy Dexter, said that the fights between Sharon and her children were not serious. She said that Sharon did not fit in at first, but she eventually did and worked very hard to make her life in Idaho work. Sandy Dexter went on to say that Sharon was full of life and was easy to love. Sharon also enjoyed everything, liked going to school, and took pride in getting good grades. She had friends, was smart, and had a sweet little spirit. She always told Sharon that she was welcome in their home. Sharon's brother Jay was allowed to continue in the program. Neither sibling wanted to be separated from each other, but Sharon could not go back to Idaho, and she did not want to start the school year in Eagle Butte without her brother Jay. Her dad struggled to find her a school to attend. He contacted the Brainerd Indian School on August 24th. The school year already started on August 18th, but they allowed Sharon to attend the school. The Brainerd Indian School was a boarding or residential type of school where the students lived on campus during the school year. It was in operation as a boarding school until 1989. Sharon's dad dropped her off there on August 25th, and 2 days later on the 27th, her brother boarded the bus to continue living with his foster family in Idaho. Sharon wrote home from the Brainerd Indian School and told her dad she was enjoying school. She liked swimming at Cascade Falls, hiking in the Black Hills, and she even made the cheerleading squad. She did, however, say that the older girls could be mean. Brainerd school officials said that they could tell that Sharon came from a more normal background than most of their students. She carried herself differently and with confidence. They said she also knew how to defend herself and even roughed up a boy who was messing with her. They thought she was trained in judo or karate. And they believe her strong confidence in herself was a factor in her decision to run away. On Tuesday, September 18, 1984, Sharon was at a school basketball game in Hot Springs, South Dakota. She wanted to get back to Idaho to be with her foster family and brother. She tried to get a fellow Brainerd student to go along with her, but they declined. This student did introduce her to a girl named Sandy Brokenleg, who did agree to go with her. Sandy used to attend Brainerd and lived in Hot Springs. Sharon had a bag packed on the school bus that brought them to the basketball game. She retrieved it and both girls set off to hitchhike to Idaho. The time this happened was not listed in the news articles, but the distance between Hot Springs and Rexburg is 555 miles and would be about a 9-hour drive if you were to drive straight through. Sharon's dad, Taylor, said he often warned his daughter about hitchhiking and walking along the highways. Sharon had never run away before, but she was desperate to get back to her life in Idaho, and she missed her brother very much. The girls made it to Casper, Wyoming, which is 195 miles away from Hot Springs. The day after they ran away on Wednesday, September 19, 1984, they were picked up just outside of Casper, Wyoming, by a truck driver named Royal Russell Long. He was a co-owner of a go-kart racetrack in the area and drove a 1980 or 1981 brown Chevy 4x4 pickup truck with a white camper shell. Long seemed like a trusting person when he picked the girls up. He told them he could bring them to a truck stop west of Casper. He also offered to take them to his mobile home in Evansville, which is just outside of Casper to the east. There he said he would feed them, let them do laundry, and sleep for the night. The girls agreed and went with him. Things went south when they arrived at his home. Royal Russell Long offered the girls $100 to have sex with him. These girls were young. Sharon was 12 and her friend Sandy was 15. Long was 49 years old at the time and was 6 feet 3 inches tall and weighed 220 pounds. The girls refused this offer, but Long was going to have it his way anyway. Sandy would later testify that after they refused his offer of money in exchange for sex, that he pulled a gun on her and Sharon. He then tied them up with wire hangers and taped their mouths shut. He then proceeded to beat them, and then Sandy said he raped her. She then was able to escape after he fell asleep. She also added that Sharon had not been raped at the time she escaped. Sandy had ran to a neighbor's house and called the police. She then heard his pickup truck start up and leave. When the police arrived, Long and Sharon were gone. Royal Russell Long would later claim that the girls told him they were 18 and 19, and that after consensual sex, The older girl told him their real ages of 12 and 15 and demanded $200 or they were going to call the police. This more than likely is not true and only his way of trying to justify his assault and rape. Long says that after he left with Sharon, he got gas and drove the back roads to Cheyenne. Long had lived in the area for about 5 years when this happened. He was described as a hunter and outdoorsman who knew the back roads of the area. Police put out a media release about Sharon on Wednesday night on September 19th. This was the day that Royal Russell Long picked them up and the friend escaped. Sharon's mother seen this on the news from the jail she was incarcerated in at the time. She took this very hard and needed to be sedated to calm her down. Police then later asked the public if they had seen Long or his brown Chevy truck anywhere between Casper and Pine Bluffs, which is about 40 miles east of Cheyenne. They were hoping to trace his route because he was sighted in Pine Bluffs on Friday, September 21st. Sharon was not with him, and this was the last confirmed sighting of him before his arrest. Laramie County at the time had about 6,000 miles of roads. This was according to an article published by the Rapid City Journal on October 21st, 1984. Police also received a report that on Thursday, September 20th, Long had used his CB radio to contact a trucker. Long claims that he gave Sharon to a truck driver and that they were supposed to take her to the Dallas and Fort Worth areas of Texas. This has never been confirmed. But Long was a truck driver. He knew the highways very well and how truck stops operate. He would know that it would be nearly impossible to disprove him. But without the proof of this, it can just be assumed that it did not happen. Long said that he went to Denver after this and only learned that he was a suspect as he was driving back to Casper. He then says he went to Amarillo, Texas, looking for Sharon or the truck driver. This has not been confirmed either. But we know that he ended up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He was arrested there on Wednesday, September 26, 1984. This was exactly 1 week after he picked the girls up. He had contacted friends in Casper from a payphone there. He was asking them to wire him some money. Somehow authorities found out. It was not stated if his friends turned him in or if the phone he was calling was tapped, but he was taken into custody by the FBI. Long was transferred back to Wyoming, where he eventually took a plea bargain for reduced charges. He was sentenced to 2 life terms after pleading guilty on January 23, 1985, to 2 counts of kidnapping and 1 count of aggravated assault. Charges of rape and attempted rape were thrown out along with 1 count of kidnapping for the purpose of taking a hostage. No more charges were to be filed unless new information came in about Sharon. His defense attorney tried to say that Sharon was alive and well, but offered no proof. It is important to note that despite being a suspect in many disappearances and murders, Royal Russell Long has never actually been convicted of murder. In June 2019, human remains were found in Sweetwater County in Wyoming near the Jim Bridger power plant. At the time, it was stated that the remains were native and had been at the location for about 20 to 30 years. Rumors spread quickly that this was Sharon. Her dad, Taylor, does not use the internet and did not see this. He was upset because friends and family were calling him, offering their condolences. He was never contacted by authorities and called them to inquire about what was going on. A podcast had put out an episode about the discovery and the possibility that it was Sharon. This spread like wildfire and got back to Sharon's dad. The bones turned out to be likely prehistoric,
and the sheriff's office released a statement to say that they do not believe the bones belong to Sharon. Royal Russell Long died in prison in 1993 of natural causes. Taylor attempted to visit him before he died. Long walked up to the window, looked in, and walked away. Sharon's dad has never given up his search for her. In the early days, he drove and hitchhiked around looking for her, until a trucker asked him what his other children are doing without him. He then went home to Eagle Butte to be there for his family. He is still alive but is getting up there in age. He prays for Sharon at every meal and wishes for her to return home or that her remains will be found. But when Royal Russell Long died, he also took other secrets to the grave with him. The day after he accepted the plea deal in court for the kidnapping of Sharon and her friend, the Oklahoma City Police Department questioned him about the disappearances of Cinda Pallett and Charlotte Kinsey. They had received a confidential tip that led them to Long in January of 1985. He was eventually charged with 2 counts of murder and kidnapping in relation to Cinda and Charlotte. Cinda and Charlotte were 2 13-year-old girls who were best friends. They attended the Oklahoma State Fair in Oklahoma City on September 26, 1981. Royal Russell Long was at the fair and encountered 2 boys who agreed to work for him unloading stuffed animals. It was reported that he unsuccessfully tried to get some other young girls to leave with him by claiming to hire them for work. Long and the 2 boys eventually came across Cinda and Charlotte, who also agreed to work. Bringing the boys to approach the girls was probably a tactic used by Long to gain the trust of teenage girls. He also wore a fake ID badge of a carnival worker to aid in his deception. Charlotte called her mother to ask permission to do the job. She was given the okay and was told to call again by 9 p.m. The plan was for Charlotte to stay the night at Cinda's house that day. Long then told the group that they had to leave the fairgrounds and find the delivery driver of the stuffed animals. One of the boys later testified that along the way, Royal Russell Long stopped at a store to buy duct tape. He also said the girls wanted to go back to the fair, and that Long dropped the boys off at a truck stop west of Oklahoma City. He gave them $10 and told them to wait for the truck driver. He then drove away with Cinda and Charlotte. The girls were never seen alive again. The rental car Long was driving that day was found, and blood evidence was found in the trunk. It was the early 1980s, so DNA testing was not available, and definite proof that it belonged to the girls could not be proven. This evidence, along with the boys' testimony, placing Long at the fair that day in court, was not enough evidence of murder. The judge decided that he needed definite evidence of the girls' murders, and without the bodies, there was little to go on. The judge also did not allow Sandy Broken Lake's testimony about what Long did to her and Sharon to be allowed in court, which is crazy because that case was very similar and he was convicted of kidnapping them. The judge dismissed the charges before letting a jury decide and received a lot of backlash for this decision. Long was sent back to Wyoming to finish his double life sentence for the kidnappings of Sharon and Sandy. Just a little over 4 months after the disappearance of Cinda and Charlotte, the body of a young female teenager would be found in Arizona on Valentine's Day in 1982. Because of this, she would become known as Valentine Sally for 40 years before she was identified. On February 2, 1982, a student from the Northern Arizona University picked up a hitchhiker. She told him she was staying in Phoenix and working as a dishwasher and that she needed to get to New Jersey for a family emergency. She planned on going to the Little America truck stop in Flagstaff to ask a trucker for a ride to the East Coast. The student who picked her up dropped her off at Cords Junction. Present-day Cords Junction has numerous gas stations, restaurants, and travel centers. It more than likely was also like this back in 1982 and would be easy to catch a ride from a truck driver. The next sighting of her was about 85 miles away at about 3 a.m. at the Monte Carlo Truck Stop Diner near Ash Fork, Arizona, which is north of Cords Junction and about 45 miles west of Flagstaff. The waitress at the diner was named Patty Wilkins, and she co-owned the establishment with her family. She said the girl came in with an older man who was wearing a cowboy hat with a peacock feather. Royal Russell Long was about 47 years old at this time. The waitress described this man as being about 50, but some sources also say he was between 60 and 65. The waitress added that she gave the unknown girl at the time an aspirin for a toothache. She recently had her tooth drilled for a root canal, and they crushed the aspirin to pack the tooth with it. Then on February 14, 1982, this same girl's body was found about a mile away from the truck stop, just off of Interstate 40. A law enforcement officer was looking for the tire of a disabled vehicle and stumbled upon her body that was under a cedar tree. The cause of death could not be determined, but it most definitely was a homicide. Investigators questioned people in the area, and the waitress said she remembered such a girl and recognized her clothing. She also mentioned the aspirin, and it matched what was discovered during her autopsy. In February 2021, Valentine Sally was positively identified as 17-year-old Carlene Eaton from Bellefontaine Neighbors, which is a suburb of St. Louis. She had run away from home around Christmas time in 1981. A grant funded by NCMEC made it possible for her DNA to be processed for genetic genealogy, and she was traced back to a first cousin in the St. Louis area. When investigators approached her family, they immediately asked if it was about Carlene. Although Caroline has been reunited with her family, her killer has never been identified, and law enforcement has never named a possible suspect. Many people believe that the suspect sketch matches Royal Russell Long. The most intriguing fit is the description of the cowboy hat and that Carlene was in the age range that he seemed to favor. And before all of the missing and murdered girls mentioned, there was the Rawlins Four. In July and August in 1974, 4 different young women and young girls went missing from the small town of Rawlins, Wyoming, which is located in Carbon County. Royal Russell Long was known to be living in the Rawlins area in 1974 and was known to work at fairs and carnivals when he was not driving trucks. He has never been officially named as a suspect in these cases, but considering what we know he did to Sharon and Sandy, and his most likely abduction and probable murder of Cinda and Charlotte, his possible involvement in these 4 cases cannot be ignored. All 4 of these cases are unsolved. On Thursday, July 4th, 1974, 2 friends named Carlene Brown and Christy Gross, who were both 19 years old, attended the Little Britches Rodeo. They were never seen alive again after leaving the Carbon County Fairgrounds that day, and a newspaper article from 1983 says that their van was found at the fairgrounds. Christy lived in Baudel, South Dakota, and her remains were later found on October 27, 1983, near Sinclair, Wyoming, which is only about 10 miles east of Rawlins. She was identified by dental records and a custom-made ring. Her cause of death was at least 2 blows to the head by a blunt instrument. Carlene was adopted and lived with her adopted family in Rawlins. All of her adopted family have since died. Because she was adopted, no DNA is on file for comparison to any unidentified bodies that are found. Janet Franson, who currently runs the Lost and Missing in Indian Country Facebook page, has an extensive background in all areas of law enforcement. She worked her way up from a 911 dispatcher to a homicide detective and also held positions with NamUs and NCMEC. She has received info that one or both of Carlene's biological parents are Native Americans from Oklahoma. They may have been stationed at the Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne at the time of her birth. Janet has petitioned the Wyoming courts for her adoption records to be unsealed only for the purpose of locating her parents to obtain a DNA sample. But because Wyoming is a closed adoption state, she has been denied this request twice. In August 1991, Carbon County sheriffs searched the same area Christy was found in hopes of locating Carlene. But unfortunately, she has never been located and she is presumed to have been murdered. Deborah Meyer lived in Red Lodge, Montana with her parents Diane and Dawn. She was 14 years old when she went missing. On Sunday, August 4th, 1974, the family was in Rawlins, Wyoming visiting family. The relative's home was near the intersections of 7th and Spruce Streets. Deborah had left the home to walk to a nearby movie theater. She never made it and was never seen or heard from since. There is very little media reports on her disappearance. Jaylene Banker was 10 years old and lived with her parents, Arlene and John, in Rawlins. She was the oldest of 3 children. On Friday, August 23, 1974, Jaylene attended the Carbon County Fair and Rodeo. The fairgrounds were only 5 blocks away from her home. Sometime during the night, Jaylene became separated from her family. She was never seen alive after this day. When her family reported her missing, the police acted right away. Unlike the other missing girls in Rawlins, they just assumed the other 3 ran away. Searches were immediately conducted and they even knocked door to door asking if anyone had seen the little girl. When nothing was found, the search was spread out to the entire county, then to the whole state, then the entire region. Jaylene's family would have to endure the winter holidays without knowing what happened to her. Then in the spring, her whereabouts would be revealed. On April 24, 1975, her partially clothed body was found face down in a field. Her cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head, just like what was determined with Christy Gross. The true extent of Royal Russell Long's victims will never be known. He is suspected to be involved in the disappearances and murders of several dozen young teenage girls. His jobs as a long-haul truck driver and as a carnival worker brought him to many places. If it were not for the heroic actions of Sandy Broken Lake, he most likely would have had many more victims under his belt. It is too bad that he went undetected for so long. I would urge anyone who attended any rodeos or fairs in Rawlins in the summer of 1974 to check any photo albums that might be available for any possible clues. Perhaps your parents or grandparents would own such a photo album. Long was a tall man who stood 6 feet 3 inches tall. He would stand out in the background of any picture. He most likely would be wearing his signature cowboy hat with the feather.
And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm curious to know what you think about this in the comments down below. And if you knew any of these girls, please share any memories of them. And I hope to see you in my next video.